Hello and welcome to Cricket Next. मैं हूं सौम्य कपूर and I have a very special guest with me, Paul Taylor, a former cricketer who talks about the drop-in pitches with us and explains us about the aspects around those drop-in pitches. Well, let's have a look at this conversation. So first of all, Paul, welcome to Cricket Next. How have you been? How are you?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Enjoying a bit of sunshine in the UK at last, having had the most horrendously wet winter. So yeah, looking forward to watching some good cricket.
Yeah. Okay. Coming to, as you just mentioned, coming to cricketing bit, coming to the World Cup, the pitches have already started to gather that backlash on social media because of that low scoring games like South Africa, Sri Lanka, and then the injury blows, during the India Ireland match to Rohit Sharma and Rishabh Pant. What do you make of this? Are these kind of an underprepared tracks, or what is it? They've just hurried onto it.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and obviously being thousands of miles away, it's difficult to know what's happening there. But effectively, when you build a new pitch, the root structure needs to develop, and the grass plant needs to establish itself into the root zone. Then once the pitches are in, obviously they get lifted in trays. Once they're in the main stadium, they need time to settle down, and preparation begins, because the trays can sometimes twist a little bit when they get lifted, and that can disrupt the soil profile. So they do need time to settle down. In warmer climates, that period can be sort of 6 to 9 months. And in cooler climates, like New York, as an example, it could take longer than that. So it looks like, and it's incredibly difficult to be accurate on this because obviously you can't see the pitch, or we haven't seen the pitch. But it just looks like they've perhaps not had enough time to settle down once they've been in situ. But again, that's my initial thoughts on it. It might be accurate, it might not be, but that's sort of my take on it from what I get information I can gather.
Okay, so how much time does it take for a drop in pitch to just settle down, and also the outfield, because outfield has also be something which has been very disappointing. So very slow outfield.
Yeah, I mean, it's the environment and the conditions and the climate will affect all of those things, both for the pitches and the outfield. If you start with the pitches, my understanding of this is the drop-in trays that the pitches are built in. They were sent over from Adelaide, but the pitches were actually built in Florida. So the actual structure of the pitches were put in place in Florida, using clay and the grass from the US. They were then transported from Florida to New York to be put in place in the main stadium. I believe Bermuda grass has been used in the pitches, and there's a variety called Tahoma, which I think is the one that's been used in these particular pitches. But of course, the weather and the environment will have an effect on these. And to be fair, they'll have an impact on any type of natural pitch, whether it's a drop-in pitch or not. But in terms of settlement time, as I explained, the drop-ins can be 6 to 9 months, and in cooler climates it can be a little bit longer. Outfield 4 to 6 months, but again, it depends on the work done on the outfield during the time, and also the weather conditions. So there are a number of variables that you need to take into consideration, and sadly we cannot control the weather, and that has causes issues across the world.
If you just look at the last game again between India and Ireland, there was dust balls. The moment the ball was pitching somewhere, in the areas, in different areas, probably near the wicket keeper, there was a sand dust coming out. So why is that happening? If you can just
Yeah, I think so different soils are used across the world in pitches, and you need to use a soil that's going to be effective in the climatic conditions that you have in the venue where you're playing, and that obviously can be massively diverse throughout the year. So it can be really difficult to get the right sort of base and also grass type to be used in pitches and outfields. It does vary. So when we talk about comparing what I prefer, I think it all depends on where in the world you are playing, and what sort of surface works in those particular climatic and environmental conditions. I mean, outfields tend to be constructed. Ordinarily, they are very sandy anyway, which allows obviously for drainage, for water to drain away quite easily. So it doesn't surprise me to see a bit of sand sort of kicking up when the ball bounces on the outfield. That happens in on Indian grounds that I've seen over the last few months in the IPL. So, you know, it's not unique to this particular stadium, but it is a new stadium, and I don't think you can get away from that fact. So yeah, I think there's been a few issues, but you know, it's difficult to pinpoint the exact issues there.
Okay, and you know, Paul, we've noticed, we've observed that the medium paces are getting a bit of a movement there. You know, this is because of the surface that the paces might have an edge over spinners, or it is about the conditions, or what is it? Is it?
I think again, there looks to be quite a lot of grass on the surface, but again, without looking at it closely, it's difficult to say. I understand there's a few cracks been appearing in the surface, so it's obviously drying out, which you know can have an impact on the amount that the ball bounces. I don't think we've seen much spin on the pitches to date in the games that obviously have been played, and the pace bowlers have dominated. You know, the bounce has been indifferent, and there's been I think the reason for the concerns is, you know, if a ball pitches on a certain length and the difference in bounce sort of exceeds, I'm going to say 6 to 9 inches, you can cope with that amount of variance, but I think there's some analysis been done and it's a lot more significant. And if the ball's bouncing in a particular area and there's 1 or 2 feet worth of difference, that's when there's obviously concerns and issues for batsmen trying to play on that type of surface. But yeah, I think certainly on these the pitches so far, the in New York, the pace bowlers have dominated because there's been a variance in bounce, and there's been a variance in pace as well. It's been two issues that have caused the challenges, I think.
Okay, I'll just digress a bit because I just want to understand, you know, the difference between the red ball and the white ball as well on these kind of tracks. You know, if you have an uneven kind of a bounce, this is also going to help the bowlers with the red ball as well. It
all depends what manufacturer of red ball and white ball you're using, and I don't know firsthand what they're using in the World Cup. In the UK, in white ball, we use it's a kookaburra ball, which doesn't have much of a seam on it. In red ball cricket, we use readers and we use dukes. So they're the sort of 2 main red ball supplies that we use. And you know, the seam is more predominant, more prominent on the ball. So it all depends what type of ball you're using. As I say, in the UK, the bowlers get a bit more seam movement because the seam is more pronounced than it maybe would be on a white ball, which is a flatter kookaburra seam. Okay. Lastly, do you think drop-in pitches are the future? You know, considering the amount of cricket that is going all over the globe. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be critical. You know, drop-in pitches have got their place. Fundamentally, they were designed for multi-sport venues. So the Adelaide Oval, the MCG in Australia, they use those venues for multi-sports. It's not just a cricket stadium. They also use it for concerts and big events. And so the hybrid surface, the drop-in pitches were designed so that you could lift in a cricket ground, a cricket square, when you're playing cricket, and if you're using it for a concert venue or maybe an Aussie Rules football game, you're putting in an Aussie Rules type surface in place of obviously the harder clay, which is not conducive to play Aussie Rules football across. So that was how they were originally designed. I think you cannot replace a natural pitch. I think having a fully natural pitch in situ 12 months of the year, you can control all the aspects of the pitch and make it as good as it can possibly be. I think, you know, when you're lifting trays out and moving them around on a regular basis, you know, firstly, there's the cost of doing that. You need the equipment, the cranes to lift them in and out. You also need space to store them when you're not using them. So there's a huge amount of infrastructure needed to make it work. And whether it's cost effective to do that or not, I don't know. It all depends on the specific circumstances. So I think in a multi-sport stadium, multi-event stadium scenario, if the return on changing that pitch backwards and forwards makes sense economically, then perhaps it is the way to go. But when it comes to, I'm going to say, mainstream cricket, I think nothing replaces a fully natural pitch. And there are ways of improving the longevity and the quality of that pitch by doing various things to it. One of which would be hybrid stitching, which is what our company does.
Okay.
So,
Just one thing, does the rolling thing, help for the kind of surface that we get? That roller, does it help? Does the roller help?
Rolling, yeah. I mean, once a pitch is in situ, watering and rolling will improve the surface. Whether it will improve surfaces that are in situ at the moment, I don't know. It all depends, obviously, what the condition of they are. Because if you water it, you've got to allow time for the pitch to dry out to be able to play on it. So, it's but rolling definitely does help a surface. It helps with compaction. It will help giving more even pace and bounce over a period of time. But yeah, so it does help.
Okay. Well, thank you, Paul. Thank you for talking to Cricket Next, and thank you for your insights. It was lovely chatting with you. Thanks.
No problem at all. It's an absolute pleasure.